What we're going to be doing today is a kind of summary of what I do normally. So I'm going to try not talk too long because normally I have longer conferences, so today it's going to be quite solid. So what I'm going to be doing is to try summarize the main points of what I'm trying to transmit of all the different conferences that I've been doing lately. To begin with a brief summary of what this is all about, from the year 87, a lot of us have came with the knowledge, which isn't new, it is just the base of it, to help people to understand the process that we are going through. Have had this knowledge for a long time, but it's been a bit distorted and confused. So the idea is to help people to organize the basis of this information, to understand the process that we are going through. And this way also to help people understand the process that we are going through today. I normally ask a lot of questions and allow people to ask their questions, but because of the short timing we have today, I'm going to have to try and keep it short. At the end, you can ask your questions. Normally, I prefer you to ask the questions while I'm talking, but if we do this, we'll finish at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, what we're going to talk today about is this, apărut. Apărut summarizes the whole main idea of what I'm trying to transmit. The summary of the plan and the reason probably you are here trying to look for information or knowledge or whatever you're here for. Apărut means heaven on earth. The idea is to understand why we are here on earth. The main idea is why we have been created. That's why I want you to understand this phrase. I use this language to say this phrase because it hasn't got any emotional attachment to it. If we translate it, bring the heaven to earth, and after bring its light to heaven, it has a strong Catholic attachment to it. The idea that heaven is up there and earth down here and all that sort of things. Ater means heaven. Ater isn't really heaven. It's everything. It's the universal essence. And tun is all the essence that became dense. Everything which is dense light, like matter, for example. We are in the process to bring that heaven to earth, which is do apărut. This is a process which each and every one of us has accepted to be born and take part in a physical world. It's the essential plan that many of us have forgotten because it happened so long ago, even before time existed. So we have forgotten about it a bit. But apărut is something we are working on here and today, which is to bring all the divine to earth. The problem is, we as a humanity have reached the end point. What does this mean? We want to be here, but also we want to go. It's kind of, I like this, but not too much. I want to go to the light, but not too much. So we are starting to integrate the process of bringing heaven to earth. To start now to bring that earth to the totality. Okay? We are going to talk about this to understand better why this has begun, the cosmic plan. We are going to talk about the birth of the cosmic plan. So, I'm not going to be explaining this from a spiritual point of view, but to offer you a tool so you can put it into practice here and now, to understand why all this exists and how I can use it in my everyday life. Okay? Understood? So, first of all, we are going to talk about the universal points. Anybody knows what this is? Can you see it? Nothing. Yes, this was the first thing. People call it nothing. Anyone knows what nothing is? Exactly. Our brain can't understand it because it's too much. It's so much, even more than the light. So it can't be felt or seen. It's more than the totality. Nothing is like this room, and each of you are like a god. Without the oxygen, walls, roof, and floors, we couldn't be able to be here. Nothing is what allows us to exist. Something important in all of this is breathing. This means beings that become conscious of themselves and which begin the process of evolution. Have you noticed that meditation is back into fashion? Meditation is one of the ways we can reach the understanding of totality. Well, at the beginning, a kind of meditation happened. We meditate to understand better what? Sometimes we try to find answers, and by doing a meditation, we try to understand something that is outwards of us. Kind of, how can I understand this which is happening to me? This is because we are still trying to practice outwards. Everything we practice is outwards. Well, this being we call God is only meditating inwards, from the skin inside. Alright? This is what we are going to see now. That point there is what we know as, and this is. So it's kind of God sat down and began to meditate for a bit. This breathing, with which one begins to meditate, is what began to make everything we know. This here isn't really light. I put it this way for you to understand, but it isn't light yet. So, what we are going to see are the structures of the universe that made us exist. To understand this, we must understand something else. If I'm a being who's experimenting, I've got to know what's inside me. If I'm the totality, how can I experience myself? To understand myself within. I'm everything. It's a bit difficult. Because if I'm trying to analyze everything, it's a bit impossible. So what this everything does is begin to divide itself, to understand itself by parts. But of course, if someone cuts his arm to try and understand it, he'll lose his arm. So it needs something within to see how each part is. So it's doing this meditation when the first phrase was said. Can you help me to experience everything inside, to understand what's outside? Who do you think he said this to? To all of us who are inside. So God is like our body, and every electron of our body is us. So what it did first was ask us permission and help so we could experience from within each and every of its parts. And that is what we are doing here. So for the universe, God, to be able to experiment, the following happened. Can you see it? That irradiation is... It's the closest we can get to understand it. Anyone knows what that is? That was the first thing that appeared in the universe. Even the Bible says it. Do you know what it was? Do you remember, in the beginning was the Word? Do you remember that? Anyone read the Bible? I didn't, so I'm not really sure. At the beginning was the Word. What is the Word? The Word is the sound. The first thing was the sound. As a humanity, we understand it as a word, God's word. Do you recognize it? Which was the sound, the original sound? The famous of course. We can't repeat it because our throat would burst, but more or less it's that. So the sound is the base of everything that exists. The vibration of sound is what creates everything that exists. It's the base, the sound and breath. From the sound, what emerges is what the people of my level call heat. The first thing that emerges from the sound is heat then. We don't refer to it with any emotional baggage, just universal mathematical functions. So what is heat? Heat emerges when the sound begins to move around the whole universe. What is this that you see on the screen? These yellow points that are about to emerge. What do you think they are? Okay. Do you recognize it? What are they? They are electrons. But universally, what are electrons? Are they the suns, the stars? At this point, the idea of matter doesn't even exist. These famous electrons here, which mobilizes the sound, is what we call spirits. The electrons of the universe are the spirits. This means who we are. Without form, just moving around from the sun. At the microcosmic level, we can say they're electrons, and at the macrocosmic, they are what we know as spirits. These beings create the heat. What is heat? It's magnetism, because all the spirits moving around the universe connect with each other, creating a different vibration in the universe, which we can see with this color, the green color. Do you see what emerged from magnetism? Magnetism is what begins to unify all things. Everything begins to move very strongly. When this emerges, this vibration, everything begins to visualize itself in a different way and have a different sense. Because now there isn't just one sound that moves, but everything begins to move, unite, and vibrate with that sound. This is what we call love. The famous love. Obviously, love is understood in a very cheesy way here on Earth. The love between humans and all that. That is love from Earth, not the love from the universe. Universal love is magnetism, even though this might sound a bit cold. What is magnetism? It's the constant movement and unification of things. For example, it is said that the Earth loves us. Why does the Earth love us? It's because we are attracted to its center. So, Earth loves us because it's attracted to us. The sun loves the planet for the same reason. A couple loves each other because they are attracted to each other. So love is the attraction and movement of all things. At this point, love is the essence that unifies all things. That's why it is said that God is love, because God is movement. God is constant regeneration. That's why God is love. The problem with love is the following. What happens when there is only love? The chakras begin to agitate. Craziness begins to happen. Why will he say to me, I love him, and all those things? Love on its own is a kind of disaster. Actually, what that love created is what we call chaos. What is chaos? Constant movement, a strong movement. When there is too much love, the body seems to explode. And so from this constant movement, something else emerges. A new vibration, which we can see with this color, green. This new vibration is the reflection of what we know as light. So from the magnetic movement of love, the light emerges. What is light? It's the movement reflecting itself against the cosmic walls from the center. When it bounces against the cosmic walls, what emerges is the following. An energy we call here as cold, although in reality it isn't really cold. This is just the closest comparison we can find here on Earth. So coldness is the sensation that the light creates in the universe. How? Reflecting itself against the cosmic walls. And when this happens, it's when we begin to find geometry. Do you know what it is? Anyone knows what sacred geometry is? Yes, it's the universal patterns, the basic patterns. So this geometry is going to make the light organize how the vibration of love should move better, so that we don't end up in chaos. So love stops moving all over the place and starts to move in a pattern, geometrical patterns. So coldness organizes this constant movement of love. What happens then? The following emerges. A new vibration appears, which we call time density. Do you know what time is? Any idea? Nobody knows what time is? First of all, does time exist? No? It is said today by some people that time doesn't exist, but what doesn't exist is the concept of time we have in our heads. The idea of this happened, this is happening, and this will happen. That isn't really time. That is just a way of getting organized. But it isn't time. Time is something different. Time moves in this way. And what is it really? Time is really the corrosion of matter. So that's what time is. To explain it more graphically, let's see it if I can draw it. Okay. We have this, for example. Can you see it? There? Okay, let's try with this one. Well, more or less. What are these points? They are the spirits. They make everything to be in constant movement, love. When these spirits emanate light, they connect between each other in that light. Like this. Is that understood? Here is when geometry appears for the first time. It's the unification of light of that love. Now, what is the density, the time density? The time density does it to make these spirits to be able to experiment everything in the universe as much as possible. So for them not to move in the same place, but they have to move around in as many ways to experiment all the positions of the universe. So these spirits begin to move in different directions and become smaller and smaller until that geometry begins to collapse between each other and to deform itself. What does this mean in our physical world? Well, when matter deforms itself or collapses, we understand this as the aging or the pass of time. So the corrosion of matter is time. That's what it is. Time structures the geometrical light patterns so it can become something different. Time allows the constant transformation and experimentation of all things. Without time, we wouldn't be able to experience anything, okay? So then, what would be the opposite of love? Anyone knows? If magnetism is love, what is geometry going to be? Hate? No, that is something very human. If it's a human duality, really hate is also on the side of love, really. Hate is just blocked love, okay? Hate is a lot of blocked love. So, what is geometry? It's going to be wisdom. Why? Because wisdom organizes love. Have you noticed when you fall too much in love, your mind starts to say, okay, calm down and think. So without wisdom or without love, we cannot live, really. So, to become a balanced being, we must have both things integrated. If we are too loving, we vibrate too much. If we are too wise, we are very ecstatic. So we should move with both. Once wisdom emerges, then form begins to take place. Why? Because the irradiation that comes from the light starts to become dense when creating different patterns. For example, it begins to deform itself until creating different vibrations which begin to collapse against each other. When all the time density begins to collapse and unite in one point, what happens? What happens when we concentrate too much energy in one point? It explodes. Do you remember that? The Big Bang. So it's here where the Big Bang took place. Before, everything was just vibration, etheric, mathematics, geometry. Then after the total densification of these patterns, the Big Bang happened. Why? Because we reached a point where we understood the head, the throat, top of the chest, and after we had to go on to something more dense. So everything unified itself and exploded. And when it exploded, then it went all over the place and the matter was created. When matter was created, then this geometrical pattern emerged. Do you recognize it? This pattern is very important for us, not because it's only used by the Hebrews, it's also used by other cultures like the Arabs, for example. They use this pattern because it is the complete integration of all beings. Every being who is going to experiment something, at one point have to experiment this pattern to be able to exist and integrate everything they have lived. So then other geometrical patterns begin to occur, to expand that experience for the rest and for the universe. So once we have all this geometry integrated, then we begin to understand the cosmic plan. And what is the cosmic plan? Well, what is above is below. And why is this? Well, the cosmic plan has the aim to help each electron, which is going to experience each part of this being, to have within each of them the route to return to the totality, so that each electron can become a new universe. And how can this happen? Well, of course, you don't give each spirit a map. What happens here is geometry. This means that all the geometrical patterns that exist above begin to bend within until they become the tiniest, smallest possible, which will have the same patterns as above. This means the atoms have the same structure as the universe, the quantum have the same structure as the universe. This will help every atom of life inside our cells to have the root to become a universe. That's why it is said, know thyself to know the universe. Have you ever heard this? It was said in Greece, to be able to know the universe, one has to know themselves. That is because within us we have the whole universe. To understand God, we don't have to look up into the stars, because we will understand the stars when we get to understand our body, spirit, and soul. So we should begin to stop worrying what's above the atmosphere and focus on what we are doing and have to do with each other and with ourselves. Okay then. So, how does the universe develop? What we are going to see here at this point is what we are actually dealing with. We'll have to see it a bit fast, but I hope it is understood at the end. So, do you remember about the expansion of the universe with all those spheres of light we have just seen? Those spheres show the way the universe expands, how the body of the being of God expands. It's like an onion by layers, from the subtlest to the most dense. So that's the way that the universe moves. This is because it is trying to practice to experience everything by parts. And by dividing itself in layers, it will be able to understand itself better. So how does it get divided? Well, separating each light from the others more and more until we get this structure. So do you recognize this? Yes, they are the chakras. What are the chakras? They are the radiation of light divided and densified. Do you remember the saying, we are created in the image and likeness of God? So who is God? A man with a beard and 2 legs? No, really it is that the same vibration that emerges from totality has the same form in all the layers. So if one is going to experiment a little part of that body, then it's just going to divide itself into 2 parts. But if we have to experiment everything in one, then it'll divide itself in many more. So we are divided basically into these chakras here. Observe what that on the side is. Do you know what that is? Well, they are the dimensions. And what are the dimensions exactly? The dimensions are different vibratorial states of all this, of everything. So everything is exactly the same in essence. The difference is that when they vibrate in different tunes, they express different dimensions. In which dimension are we in? Well, we are in the 3rd dimension. Many already want to go rushing to the 5th, but I advise them not to rush. Let's go step by step. So if we are in the 3rd dimension, does that mean we have to experience everything up? Do we have to experiment from the 4th until the 22nd dimension? Do you think that's the case? Look, we are at the top in the emanation level. Can you observe that point on the top? Well, that is an electron, a spirit. Yes? And who are the spirits? Well, we are the spirits. So if we were in the 22nd dimension, what happens then? Well, that means we have been in all the dimensions. What we have been doing is making that Ater, heaven, come to Tum, earth. We have been bringing everything which is in heaven to come down to earth, densified, to practice and experiment it in different ways. And once we have practiced everything, then we have to make everything which is here may go back to the 22nd dimension. And this is the hardest part. Coming down, we just slide down, but it's not the same coming up. That's why we are so stuck in the 3rd dimension, because it's the densest. So we think, oh my God, we have to go through all those dimensions, but really that's where we've just came from. So now we just have to go back, and like I said, that's the hardest. So don't try to rush to escape from 3rd dimension, because if you leave without your body, that means you have to come back again. Have you heard about physical ascension? Well, that is one of the greatest aims of humanity. But we mustn't obsessively look for it. We should just let it happen. That's the big difference. Many people are worried about ascending physically, but you mustn't worry about that. It doesn't make sense to get attached to becoming unattached. At the end, you just get attached to becoming unattached. It doesn't make sense. So we must try to relax and focus on what we have to do in third dimension. And whenever the moment comes, it'll come. We don't have to get rid of the physical body. We have to take the physical body and take the house, take the car, take the grandma, the dog, everything. So relax and enjoy. So, at the emanation level is where everything comes from. Which chakra do you think it corresponds with? Well, with the throat and the head. We have the crown chakra, we've got the third eye, and we've got the throat. These three chakras are the ones which correspond with the emanation level. These chakras create everything that's going to emerge below. That's why our words, thoughts, and consciousness is important, because everything we say, think, and co-create can have an effect. So at the emanation level, we have, like we said before, we have heat and cold energy. The first is magnetism, and the second is the balance provided by sacred geometry. So it's going to be at this level where all this vibration comes from. That's why we don't really understand this vibration very well, because we are still at an emotional level. That's why it's hard, the practice of unconditional love, because universal unconditional love has nothing to do with emotional love. Because we are still working with our feelings and our emotions, it's hard to understand this. That's why some of us come from that level, which isn't superior, it's just different, to explain these things. And it seems like if we are giving some sort of computer instructions, it sounds very cold, you know, just geometry, algebra. What is a miracle? It's mathematical alteration. So what really happens is that it isn't really understood. Sometimes I explain that at that level, the highest fulfillment I remember being was to be an electron inside a cable. It's an incredible feeling. And this idea of paradise is very different to what is understood here. Really, our idea of paradise is just in fourth dimension. So just imagine all that's left, all the level that's left. So just try to relax again. So here is where the soul is going to appear. When the souls emerge, it's when the emotional level begins to appear. The souls, which I represent here by that pink point, is a vibrational level that allows the spirit to experiment in matter. Souls are like etheric placentas which move around the universe. So the soul accepts being the vehicle of the spirit and begins to experiment. How does it do it? Through love and through wisdom. Those are the two main parts with which the soul experiments, well as the spirit works through magnetism and geometry. But really they are just the same thing, but at a different vibrational level. Okay, so once we have spirits and souls in this process, then the entities begin to appear. Entities are the first beings that exist in the universe. And so who are entities? Who are the entities? Well, logically, they are not beings sitting down in a chair. They are beings which look like this. These entities vibrate with all their essence, filling huge spaces of the universe. An entity is like our arm, and it's a being with many beings inside it. It hasn't got a particular form, it just moves. These entities are going to create everything that emerges after. They are the first manifestations of the universe. And from them, the angelic level appears. At this level, we don't find people with robes and wings flying around. The angelic level is where the chakras begin to divide themselves to be able to experiment for the first time the different densities of an etheric body. All of us here are angelic because to be able to be born here, most of us at one point had to be angelic. I don't mean angels, I mean angelical. Beings who begin to divide their geometry. From the angelic level, all the forms known in the universe begin to appear. For example, this one. Do you recognize it? What's this?
¿Qué es esto? Para tener una mejor idea. A ver con cuál se ve mejor. Teníamos esto. ¿No se ve? Problema. Exacto.
So we get this pattern. Remember? Well, I guess you can't really see it very well, so you're gonna better have to imagine it. Use your right brain for this. So imagine this pattern in 3 dimensions. It's like 2 pyramids in this position. What does this mean? They are the electrons which radiate light, which create a vibrational being which begins to move itself by love, like this. What this does is contain all the light of the being in the center. When it turns faster, a whirl of energy begins to emerge. In this whirl, the essence begins to divide itself, and when this happens, the chakras begin to appear one by one. So what are the chakras? They are the different energy potentials divided from that geometrical center. Okay? So each center has a different radiation. First, the third eye radiates. When this happens, it becomes conscious of everything that surrounds it. It radiates forwards, sideways, backwards, and upwards. After, the chakra below begins to radiate, which connects what's above with what's below. We call it the connection, the spiritual etheric with the physical. After this, there must be an energy that radiates towards everywhere, what is being perceived from above, from the third eye. How does this chakra radiate? Well, it's like a light pulsar. Do you know what a pulsar star is? It's a star which radiates its light through the poles, like constant pulses, boom, boom. It does this to send that light to different points depending where the poles are pointing to. After, we have the chakra or energy which unifies it all. Everything that's above begins to unify and expand. After, there is a chakra which begins to divide itself, because we have to practice duality. And another one that has to bring all of it to a specific point below, to concrete itself in the physical worlds. So, when that light and radiation begins to come dense, what happens? So, let's sum up. There's a chakra which radiates forwards and upwards and sideways. One that connects, one that radiates like a pulsar, like a heart, one that unites, one that divides itself to practice duality, and another one that anchors into the earth. This represents the physical body. And what is the physical body? Well, it's the radiation of the chakras becoming dense. Is this understood? We don't have 2 arms just because. What do these arms do? From that pulsar chakra that radiates from the poles, from these poles, a light radiates to one arm and another light radiates to the other arm. One is going to take so the other arm can give to others, and it's going to move around. So imagine that a sphere radiating light. and when it densifies, it becomes arms. Of course, this requires millions and millions of years of evolution. It doesn't just appear suddenly. The more chakras you have, the more form you've got. Imagine the base chakra, which creates the last form, which is legs and feet, to be present here. Well, anyone here can see etheric or spiritual or light beings, even a little stamp in a church? Well, have you noticed that the spiritual masters, light beings, tend to have a robe and they are like levitating around? Have you noticed that? The entities are painted with huge clothes floating about. Why do you think that happens? Well, this is because they still haven't got the chakras below, only from the heart upwards. So when they get close to matter, the light densifies and it looks like a robe. And what happens with those who are ascended masters? Well, those are the ones that normally have a robe, but you can see their toes below. If you can't see their feet, this is because they have never been born in human history. And if they are floating and levitating, it's because they haven't got legs. And to not get scared, just think they got a robe. Another thing, do you know why they look all the same? Have you noticed that Saint Germain, Jesus, all the ascended masters look all the same? It seems like it's a very boring level. Why is this? Well, it's because at that level, they haven't practiced personality yet, or they have already integrated personality. So when one has already experienced and practiced personality, then their image begins to look alike. That's why at the ascended master level, they look all the same. You get confused with all of them. So we have this basic form. Another basic form, can you see the radiation from the being? We have the geometry of our body, and behind there are another points, those spikes. What are those spikes? Look at it carefully. It's very simple. They are wings. They are wings, yes. So have you noticed that angels have wings normally? They don't really have feathers. What happens is that when they approach matter, their geometry begins to densify and it looks like wings. But really, this geometry just comes from the radiation of their being. When you radiate from the heart outwards, that means they are helping others in their process or their way. That's why guarding or warrior angels are painted with wings on their backs. And those who are working for the purpose of the totality, they seem to have wings coming out of their stomach chakra. This is because it's the center of the totality. Maybe it's happened to you, or it will happen, that after energy therapy, you feel as if you've got wings behind it. This is because you are integrating the geometrical pattern of radiation. So those wings that one feels at the back aren't really wings. They are just a geometry which is radiating. For us, they seem like wings. But normally this happens when you're starting to integrate more things in your life. So you have already practiced many things. For example, you don't have to practice the arm movement anymore, but to start practicing the radiation of what you have got inside. When one begins to radiate what they have got inside, that's when they begin to get these wings. So, back to the angelics, which all of us are. From the angelic entities, the famous Christic and wise beings begin to emerge. Okay, anybody knows what a Christic being is? Do you know any Christic being? Yes, Jesus. Jesus is the most famous Christic, but there are many others like Buddha, Mahoma, or many others. All of them come from the Christic level. There aren't just 3 or 4. Like Jesus, Mahoma, and Buddha were just the ones that chose to come here. There are many all over the place. What they do is radiate with their light to help others do the thing positively, while as the wise beings offer the structures or methods so they can do it better. So the wise beings help you to know what to do and how to do it better, and the Christics beings guide you through the process to make sure you do it correctly. So who are the poor guys who are going to have to experiment? Well, the people in the middle, the angelical beings, who are asking where, and saying, I'll go, but not sure where. So the wise people say, over there, and the Christic beings say, I'll go with you. Well, so from here, the soul is going to experiment these things. And what happens when the soul experiments these things? Like I said, the first ones to appear are the Christics and wise beings. And they don't have a strict geometry. That means they don't live in time density. If they only have light radiation and no strict geometry, that means there is no real time. That's why we leave, when we leave the 3D more and more, there's going to be less and less time. In fourth dimension, it's relative. In fifth dimension, it's hard to perceive time. In sixth dimension, one creates time however they feel like it. In seventh dimension, it's not really thought about. And in eighth dimension, it doesn't even exist. There isn't a single atom left of matter, so time can't exist. So when we begin to work with the two chakras below in the universe, we have to have time. And knowing that the Christics, wise, and angelic beings were still in between 9th and 11th dimension, they did things whenever they wanted. So they would take millions of years to just do one thing. So some wise beings decided that it was going to be necessary to begin to put limits to this. Not because nothing was happening, but because there was a lot of things to be done. And they are concentrating, for example, in a flower, and there are many more things to be experienced in the universe. So it was necessary to begin to put limits. That's when the integration level emerges. Everything that exists in the other levels is going to be put into practice at this level. So third dimension isn't really just third dimension. It's a unification of 22 dimensions in one. That's why you are in the position that you are in. So at this integration level, everything that we have lived, experienced, and created by ourselves, we are going to experience it all together here. So the wise beings began to densify matter to create even more matter. So when this happens, time density emerges. What is time? It's the border between what's physical or material and what's not physical. So from here, a kind of separation is created, where we are going to experiment everything that's material or matter. So from here, the first beings who are going to work on matter appear, although they are not going to be very physical yet. These are the entities we call galactic beings. The galactic beings have been put there by the angelic beings in different physical or light worlds to help and to collaborate with the beings who are going to work in the densest worlds. These galactic beings are the ones we are going to call extraterrestrial. Have you heard about them? The famous ETs or galactic beings are those who work as a link between the galactic, Christic, and wise beings and us, the physical and dense beings. This is for us not to forget the reason we are here doing what we are doing. These galactic beings are the densified creation of the light beings. And for example, have you heard about the Pleiadians? Well, they are a race that tend to vibrate in both angelic levels and physical levels. And they choose where and when they want to vibrate. Their job basically is to connect with both levels to help the dense and physical beings to understand their purpose.
haya siempre un contacto y no se pierda el sentido de por qué hay que nacer en el mundo físico. ¿Sí? Esa es su función en nuestra galaxia.
So, from the galactic beings, we are going to get the physical beings, like us humans. Humans have been put here for a very important reason, and later we will understand which one that is. When we had the angelic and galactic beings, when humans were just still a project, a problem emerged. And this was that even though matter became densified, we were still contemplating, let's say, flowers for millions upon millions of years. We were focused on minute things, not like now. Just imagine how we are now. Before, we still had the Christic conscious idea of just flowing in the no time. But some people still, and if you notice, some people still have this thing of living forever. Have you observed that? The eternal life? Well, I wouldn't advise you that right now. Later we will see why. So many critics began to be born in the physical worlds, and they just continue with the process. So then this being emerged. Do you know who Luzbel is? Anyone heard about him? Anyone spoke with him one day? Well, Luzbel is also known as Lucifer. Oh, shit. So, Luzbel is a light being, one of the most important light beings in the universe. What did this light being do? He was a wise being, so he proposed a system. His system consisted in, if these humans are focusing constantly in superficial things, let's add more limits to let them know there isn't enough time to do things in the physical worlds. There are more things to experiment, not just a flower, but to begin to do more things because it is possible. So next to Luzbel, a being, an angel called Michael or Mikael appeared. What did the archangel Michael say? Okay, I accept the plan, but with one condition. We can't interfere with their process, what we call free will. They are going to choose when, how, and why. Although the what is already determined. Free will only really exists from the angelic beings downwards. From the angelic beings upwards, free will doesn't really exist. Free will is the choice of how, when, with who, and where I'm going to do something, but not what. What is going to happen is pure geometry and mathematics, so it's always going to be how it's supposed to be. As a spirit, I'm going to choose how, when, and with who I'm going to do my plan, but the plan is already mapped out. This is free will. So the wise being, Luzbel, for example, says we have to do the plan, and the Christics say, but allow them to do it however they want. So here an agreement is made. So let's support the process without interfering with what they decide to do. Here is where millions of beings emerged, which we call light angels and dark angels. Well, the dark angels aren't actually dark. They are also light beings. And if you ever see a dark angel, they actually look very similar to the light angels. The only difference really is that one puts limits and the other guides in those limits. Yes? Is that understood? But the same problem was still appearing. No matter how many geometrical limits the wise beings put, like making them live less time, the reincarnation system, the physical beings were still lost. So the wise beings added more and more limits. They made the humans stop living for 1,000 years, and they were going to be living for only 26 years. So there was actually a moment that the humans and other physical beings would live until they were 26 and they were already be old. But what happened was that humans were still living 1,000 years doing the same thing, but how? Dying and rebirthing constantly. Anyone remembers this?
Haciendo lo mismo. ¿Cómo? Muriendo, naciendo, muriendo, naciendo, muriendo, naciendo. ¿Les suena?
So many of you have been there, is that correct? Living, dying, living, dying, living, dying, constant reincarnation cycle where one gets trapped and just can't escape. Why can't they escape? Because they don't realize they can escape. It's not because someone said you must stay there, but because one is experimenting in many lives what they should experiment in just one. So people are still in the idea that in 1,000 years they can do a lot of things, so they just take their time. So some dark angels begin to think these people are stupid, to say it in a very human way. This is what they were thinking. So they began to get closer and closer to matter and to try tell the physical beings what to do, but still nothing was happening. So what happened? The dark angels began to get too close to matter to show the physical beings where to go, and the light angels were following them, and so they were also getting too close. And what happens when they get too close? Well, they begin to disconnect with the purpose, because the closer one gets to matter, the top chakra gets rigid or stiff. So one begins to forget what they really were above. Because a requirement to be in a physical world is to not know everything, to be able to focus in what one has to do there. That's why we forget when we get born. The problem was that for the dark and light angels to help us do things better and faster, they should be connected. But they got too close to matter, and that's when the following happened. Angels and demons. Do you remember? So, well, the demons are also helping us with the process. The problem is that they are very close to us, and, well, they thought, okay, if they don't do it well, I'll do it. And they began to go inside the physical body. This is known as exorcisms, possessed bodies, and all that. They decided to do it because they thought that humans were just too stupid to do it. So the big problem actually started here, because the angels started to come closer to the physical beings because the demons began to go in the bodies. Do you remember that agreement between Michael and Luzbel? Don't influence their process. And the demons began to do it. And when they did it, the disaster began. The angel declared a war against the demons. How did this war begin? Well, the light angels began to put a bodyguard next to every soul. This is what we call a guard angel. This was to prevent the demons taking possession of the physical body. Actually, our physical body is a kind of natural protection from the beings of other levels. But if you are tuned to their vibration, they can influence you. So if you vibrate low, you can be close to the demons. And if you vibrate high, you can be close to the angels. So, well, these two who are bothering us a lot, because it must be said that the angels sometimes are bothering us, are just like us. They've been disconnected from the general purpose. The demons got stuck in their minds, hurry them up, hurry them up. And the angels protect them. So the angels declared a war against the demons, and these demons began to screw with our lives. It's what got stuck in their minds, simply. So in all of this, where do we fit? Well, we are neutral. We are in the middle of all this. This means that both angels and demons depend on us to be able to return and connect again. Those demons or angels that die in the battle are reborn here as humans. when a demon is born here, how would you recognize it? With horns? Well, many can think that born demons are going to be full of rage, hate, and desire to kill. This is not so. Sometimes a demon is born and finds everything amusing and playful. Because being a demon doesn't mean to be evil necessary. It just means to try speed up the process. Yes? Is this understood? A different thing is that some of them have chosen a negative way of speeding the process. And the angels that are born here, sometimes they are very angry because they don't like to be born here. Their destiny wasn't to work for 8 hours a day. So they are sometimes pissed off when they come here because they are filled with love. And what was a lot of blocked love? Well, it's hate. So the demons kind of let their hate just flow. So they're not going to show a lot of hate. They don't kind of accumulate that hate. So in general, what is this all about? Really, everything is the same. We are all the same, and we are all working for the same process. Demons aren't darkness as we know it. They just chose that process to do it. But this doesn't mean they are the baddies of the film. We mustn't fight against them. We must just try to integrate them. They are also brothers who, like us, became disconnected or even worse. And another thing to take into consideration are the beings of seventh dimension we call spiritual guides, the secretaries who we advise to know sometimes what to do. Well, before we are born, we agree with them a plan. We agree what we are going to do in this theater called life. And many of us agree that if at any point we get lost in our process, for something to smack us, to wake up, to reconnect again. Here's when the personal crises kick in. The guides just follow the plan. They aren't necessarily good as we understand it. They are neutral. That's what I like to talk about neutrality. Because for thousands of years we've been talking about good and bad, light and darkness. But let's start talking about the neutral beings. The neutral beings are focused on the process. They are not interested in light or darkness. What they care about is for things to get done. Doesn't matter how, but for it to be done. So many of these guides of seventh dimension are going to tell the angels to make sure we get things done. To show you this with a graphic example, just imagine you're walking to work, which is straightforward, but on a street to the left, where you never go, there is a library which has a book with the title which is going to attract your attention. And this book, you'll find the answers of what you have to do after. And they kind of try to tell you to go to that street, but you don't notice. They try again, the guides, to tell you, but because you're so disconnected, you just don't realize this. So you just keep on moving forward. So literally, they're going to put roadworks in the corner and to try and make you turn, but you decide to just keep on your path. At this point, they decide to call the angels to help guide you. And the angels try to give you signs to recognize this message. Or even they stand in front of you, giving you a kind of energy that doesn't allow you to walk. It kind of paralyzes you. They even blow you the message. Over there, and you keep on walking, deciding to ignore the signs. That's when angels and guides of seventh dimension call in the demons. Remember, the guides are neutral. They just want the process to happen. So they decide to tell a demon, well, we need your help. And of course, he says, well, I'm more than happy to help you. So then the demon gets close to the matter and they decide to go behind you. And if you don't listen to them immediately, then when you decide to cross the street, a van is going to appear and run over you. Your face is going to be bleeding on the road, and when you look up, you see the shop assistant of the bookshop comes and helps you, and when she takes you into the shop, you look and you find the book right in front of you. They just try to look for the best way to do it. Their way of thinking is, if they don't understand it this way, they won't understand it ever. That's why one must be aware of the signs, so that the guides of seventh dimension don't decide to call the demons. But what we should understand also is that we must thank these demons, because they've allowed us to understand something faster. The problem is that many of them have created a lot of stories, like the humans with the excess of conspiracies, and they've created a kind of hell where they decided to sell and buy souls. Stupid things like this which exist, but we mustn't worry about it. So us as spirits, we don't learn in a linear way. We learn constantly in different positions in place. We learn through many paths. So to be able to be beings born in matter, at one point we must have been demons or other ways of darkness like witches or alchemists or whatever. And the two ways we are going to kind of filter ourselves through this universe is what we call karma and dharma. For example, I could come from very high dimensions, and if I want to come down to matter, the way I'm going to choose, or I have to do it, is through karma. It's the balance I need to come down into matter. But through dharma, I can just go up. So dharma is everything that I have learned and taught. And karma is all the homework I have left to do. It's not anything negative, it's just what I left for the following year. So to go up to other dimension, one has to get rid of the karma to balance it. This is really what sets limits between the dimensions. That's why we must try to get rid of old things and learn the most amount of new lessons to be able to go up the dimensions with matter. And all this, at the end of the day, is to be able to experiment and to integrate. We aren't really here to make the darkness of the planets disappear. We aren't necessarily here to live a life of peace, love, and eternal happiness. Everything we do is to be able to experiment and integrate our lessons. Everything, light, darkness, everything must be experienced. The problem is when we think that when the experience goes wrong, this is bad. Do you know how mistake is in Latin? It's pecado, which means sin. We think that we mustn't commit mistakes, we must do exactly this or that. But this isn't so. You are here to experiment. If you make a mistake, it's okay. You'll try it again after, see if it works better, and there's no problem. So everything is going to be just fine. So this is to understand the galactic plan, which was designed to help with the divine plan on the physical world, and to not forget the essential knowledge. The galaxies in the universe are like the joints of our body. They connect one part with the other, so that we are all in tune with each other. In our galaxy, we have various beings who are going to help our process. One is the Council of 13, which is known as this, the Zodiac. They are 13 beings who influence us in our learning process to make us understand what we are going to do. That's why the best way to understand our plan is a birth reading, depending on who does it, of course. Obviously not from a magazine. But it has a lot to do with what you have agreed to do before being born. So they are 13 beings who are helping us with their different energy. Also, there are others, like the star groups, like Arcturus, Pleiades, Orion, and Sirius. These are 4 of the star groups which are most going to influence us. We can see them more or less like this. these groups who have an influence on humanity and help with the process and with what the humans have to do. So the beings from Arcturus are kind of the medicine and genetic knowledgeable people of the galaxy. Most of our genes come from these beings. That's why we look so much alike. And also that's why there have been so many people that have tried to look for the pure race as the white, blonde, blue-eyed race. This is pretty ridiculous because they are just the race who helped us to be who we are, not the race that we have to guide ourselves from. There are many races on our planet, and all of them are very important. Then we have the Pleiades, which are kind of the Vatican of the galaxy. This doesn't mean they work like the Vatican, of course, but what I mean is that they work through spirituality on the physical world. They keep the connection from divinity and the planets, and that's their role. So the beings from Orion bring us the science and parts of the culture. The beings from Syria bring us architecture, linguistics, culture, and many other things. They mustn't be confused with the Greys. Do you know who the Greys are? They are quite similar. They are the ones that are normally characterized, kind of the ones from Area 51 and all that. They mustn't be confused. The Syrians have collaborated with us a lot, especially to create humanity as a society. They are very important. So they are all ETs who have influenced a lot in our system. Yes? Okay. So all of them form what is known as the Galactic Confederation and Legions. The Galactic Confederation, for those who don't know what they are exactly, are kind of the UN of the galaxy. They kind of meet together to decide if a planet below is going well or not. So these beings are going to help us with our learning process. Okay? So these ETs are going to help and work through unconditional love and compassion. This means they don't interfere in the process unless we ask for it consciously. Not by some sort of contract, but they are wise and they know when to do it. The Universal Legions are some of those ships which protect the atmosphere. Basically, their function is to not allow anybody who hasn't got a passport, just to understand the idea. So in our days, right now, the being who is managing the Galactic Confederation is this one here. People call him Aster Saran, the Intergalactic Commander. This seems like some sort of science fiction movie. His task is to make sure everything is working according to plan. Okay? So you have to be careful if you are going to read channelings from this being or any being. If you are going to read a channeling from him, be careful because he is a being who is an intergalactic politician. I don't mean be careful because he's a politician, but because he's a being who is busy with loads of things. So don't expect him to help you to find a parking space. He is a being who is helping with our process, and they contact with us through interplanetary computer networks. And like all computer networks, there are viruses. So try to be careful with those viruses. The only way to know if the information is pure for you or not is by resonating with that information. If it resonates with you, if it vibrates inside, that's perfect. If there are just 2 paragraphs that resonate with you out of the whole channeling text, just take notice of those 2. Nobody has the truth because there are viruses everywhere.
Tengan en cuenta que es eso. Nadie tiene aquí la verdad porque hay virus por todos sitios.
And this advice with any channeling. The problem isn't the channeler, but the interference that there is in the network. So also the civilizations before 4,000 before Christ, for example, Atlantida or Lemuria, for example, and alchemist architect gods like this one, Thoth, are also going to help and collaborate with our process. The alchemist architect gods are beings who are hybrids from other systems who collaborate with our system, especially through architecture and alchemy. This is to help the inner and outer transformation of beingness through the building of universal geometrical patterns on Earth, which we call architecture. So they are going to help anchor the light from the universe here on Earth in a physical form. And also voluntary spirits and souls are going to collaborate with our process. The voluntary spirits, we are many of the beings here right now, and we are the ones who say, okay, let's go and see what happens. And finally, all of the humans, every soul and spirit who has been born, every human, even those who we wonder why on earth did he, she get born, even those people that we don't understand why they're here, they are here because they have an important purpose on earth. We shouldn't believe anything about anyone. We should accept. If they are here, it must be for a reason. We have to observe what they are teaching us and nothing else. And why is all of this? Well, it is to make the earth belong to the cosmic order and for it not to lose its purpose in the totality. As you can see, the universe is huge and complex. What can we do so that this small earth doesn't get lost in all of this? Well, the following. The importance of the process on earth was because the whole solar system began to need Earth's help. Everyone knows that the solar system is a living being. It's a living being with a soul, a spirit, and a physical body, which is the solar plex of our system. Everyone knows what the solar plex is. Anyone doesn't? Well, it's the third chakra, the one in the center. So we have the base chakra, the sacral, the solar plex, heart, throat, third eye, and crown. They are the most important, although there are many other chakras. So in our solar system, which being is the solar plex? Well, the sun, of course. The sun comes from solar plex, okay? So why is the sun the solar plex? Because it's the center, all right? So where would you situate Earth? Yes, it's going to be between the heart and the base, the root chakra. Which chakra do you think Earth is? It's the sacrum, okay? This means Earth is a kidney of our solar system. Why? Because it's a planet made from water, a planet of will, creativity, fear, and frustration. So Earth is a kidney, basically. So there are other planets which are working in this process. For example, Jupiter, Venus, and Mars. What do planets do in our system, in our solar system? Do you remember the reason why we experiment? Well, it was to integrate. How do we integrate things? Which is the center through which we integrate everything? Which chakra is the most important to integrate? It's the solar plex, yes, the one in the center. Well, everyone thinks the heart, but we have the heart because we are very loving people. But the heart isn't to integrate, but to collaborate with the rest in the process, in balance. The solar plex is to integrate everything we have practiced. What comes out the heart ends up in the solar plex, okay? So everything which we integrate goes towards the solar plexus. Where are the planets going towards? Towards the sun. The planets are destined to be suns, and us as planets, we tend towards illuminating ourselves, to ascend physically. For example, Venus, which has already begun its ascent physical ascension. Why? Because there is a paradise up there? No, but because it's caught fire, it's burning. So it has begun its physical ascension process. Also Mercury, for example. And Mars, on the other hand, got rid of all the life on its planet because it began to practice being an individual. The whole planet, not only the beings above, the planet began to practice being an individual, like I said. And the other planets, began to be like a heart. So the root chakra began to be an individual, the other kidney began to light itself in fire, and Mercury began to integrate itself as another sun. So all the beings who lived on those planets and others behind, where did they go? Yes, they came here, all to Earth. So the purpose of this made Earth very important. It became more important, so it needed more light, because it had a whole bunch of beings to anchor the light. Earth is destined to become a sun, so one day it's going to begin to burn. But don't worry, because it will happen in about 5,000 million years' time. It's going to burn because it's going to ascend physically. But in the meantime, it needs many beings to anchor the light here. That's why different souls begin to be born in different forms, animal, vegetable, and human, to bring that light. The kingdoms offer different vibrations to anchor that light. The first kingdom that appeared was the mineral kingdom. It anchors the light and keeps it in on the planet, and even brings the light into the planet. From the minerals we get the second kingdom, the trees and the vegetation, which is going to channel the light from the sky to Earth. A very important function of them is to create the atmosphere. What does the atmosphere do? It keeps the light on the planet. So the light then comes and it doesn't reflect, but stays in, so that the planet begins to warm up and have life. So from here, there are many beings that aren't going to receive light, so they begin to eat the light. To reach these beings, animals, it will take many years of evolution. And after, there are beings that think, if there are animals which eat the light, then I'll eat those beings. That's how carnivores begin to appear. What does this all mean? Well, that the feeding process on the earth is essential. Food is the physical way to channel light. Well, some people meditate, other people eat. The problem isn't what you eat, but how you eat and how it comes out. One can eat meat, no problem, but it has to be able to digest it appropriately. So where does the human being fit in here? Well, humans were called to come so that some being could anchor the light consciously, and they needed them immediately. The Neanderthal and other beings were already appearing here, but they needed a being with culture, with word, with thought, that could do it immediately. That's why the Galactic Confederation brought the human. The human being and its races are a mixture of original races from Earth and from the stars. And what does the human being do? Well, they eat everything. Why does the human being eat everything? Because they didn't realize or understand why they were there. Of course, to be a race, it's necessary to eat from these kingdoms. But also they have to realize that at one point they have to stop eating these kingdoms. But one mustn't stop eating something because they think it's bad. We have to stop eating it when we feel we don't need it. The idea is to one day survive only on sunlight, but relax and take your time. So the food chain is essential to understand this process. And here is where the terrestrial or Earth plan emerges, which was created by the ancient civilizations with the help of the Galactic Confederation to keep the plan working on Earth. How do they do it? Well, through the pyramids, society, culture, civilizations. The pyramids are the best way to anchor the light, with or without us. Even if the civilizations disappeared, the light will still continue to be channeled through the pyramids. The problem is that our pyramids have an outdated Windows. Yes, the pyramids of today work on a Windows from the 97 or 98. So they have to be reprogrammed by architects, not by spiritual people. Because it's like telling a Reiki master to solve a software problem on your computer. Not a lot is going to happen. So architects made the pyramids, so architects have to install a new Windows in them. Okay? So the architects are going to come. Don't worry. In the meanwhile, we have to try and get rid of the tourism. While they are still touristic, what's important for us to do is to become pyramids. So we've got the trees who are unconsciously active in the process. We've got the pyramids who are also unconscious but a bit worn out. And we've got the humans which are totally unconscious right now. How can we make the humans a bit more conscious? Well, for them to learn from the other two, because we also have pyramid-like patterns in our geometry. But to understand this, we have to realize that what's below is also important. Yes? So the pyramid also has another pyramid below, because it doesn't mean go up to the sky, it means let's bring the sky, heaven, down to earth. They are like energy machines that allow all the divine light from the being to continue to be anchored on earth, although we, the humans, get disconnected. They did them fast and quick at the time, about 9000 BC, to make sure that when the humans got disconnected, at least there would still be this to anchor the light. So we also work downwards, and we can only work in the new society if we take example of the trees. This is essential because by this way we'll be able to channel all the light that planet Earth needs. And if we worry about our channeling process and not about the process of the rest, this is real compassion. Compassion isn't to help others or give without expecting anything in return. Compassion and unconditional love is to accept the process of each person and to respect their timing. So focus on yourself in the next 2,500 years and relax again. To understand this all, it is important to understand first what is time and how it's going to affect us. So in time we have past, present and future. Anybody knows what this is? What is the past? This can be quite confusing because we're going to talk about a paradox in time. And it's important to understand why we are going to live what's coming. Okay, can you see this? That is the past. This dot here is the present, and this is the future. We call it the curve of time, yes? Well, the past is what happened, yes? So what's the present? Here and now. Do you know that this conception of presence is completely illogical? Because we are always in past or future. I can only say I'm here in the present if I say now. It doesn't make sense, okay? So at school, we learned that the conception of time like this is like a calculation of time to understand better the historic events, okay?
Porque nos los han enseñado como un cálculo del tiempo para entender mejor hechos históricos. ¿Sí?
So we understand time this way basically because an historian decided so. This conception of time is completely illogical. It's just an organizing method, like ordering books in a library, but it doesn't really exist as so. So we have an illogical present and an extensive past and future. Now that we are accessing the fourth dimension, what must be understood is that time isn't a curve with something illogical and another curve. Time is this, a curve joined with another curve. So it's not something that happened, that we are living now and we are going to live after. So what is time then? Time is circular. It's a circle. Where is the present then? It's in everything. The eternal present. From being nothing, it became everything. So the present is eternal. Imagine we are here and here. So on the other side of the circle, parallel line, the same thing can happen. All right? Things repeat themselves. It's time something that happened and will happen. What was universal time? Do you remember? It was the degradation or the corrosion of matter. So will time be strict in what happened and what will happen? Here is where time doesn't exist. Because I can be in one point of the circle and go to another. Because time is different vibrations in matter. The past is a low vibration. The present is a static vibration. And the future is a high vibration in constant movement. If I vibrate statically, what we tend to do, I'll constantly be in the present. If we are able to change the vibration, making it very high, we will go to the future. And if we vibrate very low, we can go to the past. Okay? So time depends on the vibratory state of matter and not what has happened. This is the paradox of time. The idea that I explain this is not to explode your mind, but for you to understand that time isn't a line, it's not linear, but circular. So do you remember what happened after the fall of the Roman Empire? Anyone knows history here? In Europe, what happened? Which age came? Yes, the medieval age. Was it any use for you to know this? Was it useful? No, normal. Sorry for the teachers, by the way. This is normal because it doesn't make sense learning history this way. But if we study it as a circle, as something that repeats itself, well, things begin to change.
Normal, porque no tiene sentido estudiar la historia así. En cambio, si la estudiamos así es otra cosa. Miren, amanecer solar.
So look, we have the sun dawn in 2012, 2 years until then. After the sun dawn, what comes? Do you remember the whole thing about be aware he is coming back? It's not that Jesus is coming back this time, but the Christic conscious is coming back to earth, and that's what it means. When the Christic conscious comes to earth, which is already coming, an empire will fall. Which empire is this? Yes, it's the United States of America. And after the fall of the empire, what comes? The medieval age. The difference is that one happened in the Pisces age, and what's to come is the Aquarius age. So the medieval isn't going to be like before. This time it's going to be technological. What's important to understand here is that history repeats itself, and this doesn't happen just because. It repeats itself in a spiral so that we can understand what's going to happen and to get prepared for it. So, if we get disconnected from the circular time conception, then we won't know what to do or where to go. And that's what happens with Atlantida, for example. At the end, they got disconnected from the circular time, and they thought, we can do it, we can go, we can continue being an empire, because we can. But time said, no, you can't, and this is how it ended up.
mayas. Dijeron, se les terminó el turno, bueno, nos vamos. Así de fácil. ¿Vale?
Well, the Mayas, for example, understood this, and when the time came, they just left. So we have the Earth turning around the sun, and we've also got a sun in the middle, with which the sun, our sun, is turning around. In the whole galaxy, we have these 12 beings who are going to influence our process during this circular time. So the new age is not something that's going to happen, remember, but something we have to vibrate in tune with. And how can we vibrate in tune with it? Well, vibrating in tune with our Earth and with the sun. Anyone knows what we call each period that happens? Well, we call it an age. Each period where the sun goes through is called an age. How long is the whole cycle? About 26,000 years. The cycle history of 26,000 years. So every 2,100 and so years, we go past a constellation with our planet and the sun. There are two major things that set a division in this process. On one side, the light of the central sun reaches us less than on the other side. That's what we've called galactic night and day. Now we are living the galactic night. Why? Well, for about 12 to 13,000 years approximately, we went into the galactic night. This means that for about 12 to 13,000 years, humanity began to disconnect from the central sun. And we began to lose all our connection with the spiritual wisdom. Before, during the galactic day, we had a close relationship with many universal beings, like ETs, angelic beings. We had our cosmic conscious awaken, and we brought the technology of the being, etc., etc. So wisdom used to come to the people by its own. When the galactic night began, the wisdom could only come through the experience of matter. This is, through religion, philosophy, books, wise ones, monarchy. Why is this? Because Satan decided so? No, it's just a natural process in the galactic system. It's normal. We mustn't get frustrated with what happened. Everything that we've been through in the last 12 to 13,000 years was to experience everything we had learned during the galactic day, but disconnected from matter, and to test if we had learned it well. Let's see now. Is this understood then? This connection during 12 to 13,000 years and a connection during another 12 to 13,000 years. It's a natural pattern of all evolutionary process. We all go through it. So now we are at the transition between the end of the galactic night and the beginning of the galactic day. That's why it's called the galactic dawn. This dawn or transition is going to last about 150 years, so relax again. While all this is going on, through Earth, the Kundalini energy is going through. When the planets go through the different constellations on the Earth, those constellations have an effect and activate. How does it activate? Through the fire energy that travels through our planet. Okay, so everyone knows what the Kundalini is. Basically, it's called this way by the Hindus. It's a snake of fire that gets activated from the root chakras, purifying all the matter with its light until it reaches the crown chakra, where it activates and aligns the whole being. In each moment that the Kundalini begins to move, it goes through an initiation. At the root chakra, we go through a sexual initiation. At the sacrum, we go through a creativity initiation. At the solar plex, we go through the knowing of thyself, and so on, until everything activates. it's very difficult to purify a being. And sometimes you spend a whole life to purify a single chakra, just to take into consideration. So Earth also takes thousands of years to purify its chakras. About 300,000 years ago, it began to activate in Africa. Which chakra is Africa? Well, Africa is the root chakra. All that happened during that period in Africa has to do with the purification of the root chakra. After this, it began to purify the sacrum chakra in the period of Lemuria and Atlantida, all of the water civilizations. Then the solar plex activates in Asia. So the civilizations after 10,000 BC up to about 2000 BC begin to practice philosophy, medicine, the discovery of the being of the center, the integration of history, all that in the Oriental philosophy. That's why the Oriental philosophy is coming into the Western world, so that we begin to integrate with all of it, with all the things that we are frustrated with. Okay, so that's the reason why it is starting to come into the Western world. So, after the heart chakra begins to activate in Europe, even though it doesn't seem so, this doesn't mean that Europe is loving because it activates the heart chakra. Remember, the heart chakra isn't love, it's movement and unification. That's why Europe moves and creates revolutions, artistic movements, social movements, organization movements like NGOs, Greenpeace, all of those things. It also moves wars. Why? Because when the heart explodes, what happens? Well, divorces and clashes. So Europe is the movement of the planet. That's why it's the heart. Okay? Por lo tanto, Europa es el movimiento del planeta, por eso es el corazón. North America is the throat chakra because its function is to communicate. It's the communicator of the planet. So when in North America began to have the energy, it began to unify the planet through globalization with one language in a kind of government and economy. It doesn't mean it's anything negative, it's just a practice. A different matter is what the system is doing. The error, the mistake isn't the machine, but those who control it. That's the main problem, really. But North America has the function of communicating and unifying the planet through its systems. And now the Kundalini energy is activating itself in South America, in the lake Titicaca. This means that Earth is going to initiate its third eye. And when in 2050, more or less, it goes down to the Antarctic, which chakra will activate? The crown. That's probably when the pole shift will happen and the Antarctic will become North Pole. Because the Antarctic is a chakra that activates the whole planet. That's why no one can touch it and put a finger on the head. Well, we have the mental conception that Groenland and the North Pole are up. It's just because the magnetism draws us towards there. But if the magnetism changes and draws us to the Antarctic, our conception will change immediately towards the Antarctic. You can see the universe one way or the other, and it'll continue to be the same. Actually, the Bolivians still draw the Antarctic in the north. Although it doesn't seem so, the Bolivians in this aspect are the most evolved on the earth. They understand that the integration of everything is towards the Antarctic, yes? Okay. Well, the structure of the earth is the nucleus, the magma, and its hollows in some areas where there are cities inside the earth, which also belong to the Galactic Confederation and are put there to protect the center of the earth. So while we work on the surface, the Galactic Confederation also protects the inside part and the outside part from the atmosphere upwards. Each one has their role, and because we are a bit unstable on the surface, the people below make sure we don't reach the nucleus, and the people above make sure we don't go too far away.
En la superficie, los de abajo controlan que nosotros no lleguemos al núcleo y los de arriba controlan que no nos vayamos tan lejos, ¿sí? Es como que intentan, no, es ahí donde tienen que estar ustedes, ¿vale? Hacen lo que pueden.
So humanity's history is also going to be understood this way. What I am interested is for you to understand about the age of Pisces, where we have been through many things with which we are still frustrated with, yes, with division, sex, religions, political control, and all that. Really, the Pisces age was necessary. What I want to explain is its relationship with Aquarius. How can we understand what's going to happen in Aquarius? Anyone knows or has an idea? Well, there are many ideas. A world in peace, love, and unity, where we will open to our consciousness and be spiritual again, that from one day to another the whole humanity is going to improve, or a technological humanity of war and destruction and all that. Because remember this, imagine I am here. If I vibrate negatively here, everything I see after will be negative. And if I vibrate positively, I'll see everything after positively. Okay? Understood? So maybe in Aquarius, many will suffer and others will love it, will enjoy it. So what's important here is the circular history. To know what's going to happen in Aquarius, we have to see what happened in previous ages. Do you know in which age similar events happen to what will happen in Aquarius? In Leo, okay? Aquarius, and on the other side we have Leo. And in Pisces, on the other side we have Virgo. So what happened in these ages? So we have, let's say, Pisces and Virgo. Yes? So Pisces and Virgo, yes? The first thing that happened in Virgo was Atlantida. And it happened about 15,000 years ago. Atlantida had its empire, its fall, its medieval age, its renaissance, its technological development area, ecological and artistic, a period of union with the spirit and earth, work with new technology, unification of an empire, global domination, decay of a society, the fall of family, education, society, and politics, and all this influenced by a climate change which made it fall. Does this ring a bell to anyone? So in Pisces, then it's going to be practically the same. The big difference is that in Virgo, everything was done in order, with structure, and according to what had to be done. But in Pisces, it's not going to be this way, in that order. But it's going to be done by dividing the plan, yes? One fish goes one way, another fish goes the other way. So everything that we are going to practice in Pisces is going to be done through duality. That's why we are so frustrated with it, because we've been practicing it during 2,200 years intensely. We've got science, religion, man, woman, capitalism, communism, war, peace. Did you notice this? The dualities were necessary to experience. The problem is that we are only 2 years away from the beginning of a new age, which has a new tune, and we are still frustrated with 2,200 years of history. So, during this life, we have the opportunity to forgive and integrate 2,200 years of history. I would advise you to begin soon. So now to see what's going to happen in Aquarius, we should see Leo. What happened in Leo? When Atlantida fell, the Atlanteans immigrated to Egypt, to what we know as the Mayan land, and so on. What was created during these periods were the machines that would make sure that the mistakes made in Virgo wouldn't occur again. Because in Virgo, they knew that the galactic night was coming. So they tried everything possible to anchor the plan on Earth. Because the human was going to be disconnected in 2,000 years' times. So they had to guarantee that even if the human was going to get disconnected, for it to continue with the plan. Yes? So, during Cancer, Gemini, and Taurus, and Aries, they worked with different groups of knowledge, wise ones, sects, to bring this knowledge through the galactic night, through the confusion. So during Leo, what happened was the unification of humanity according to a political and spiritual plan. So for all to be connected again, that was the intention or idea why they all unified in Leo. The difference between Leo and Aquarius is that in Leo, everything was done through the kingdom, the glory. And in Aquarius, we are not going to work this way, but it's going to be through flowing, through going with the flow, let's say. So in Aquarius, we are going to unify all that became separate and divided. The same way Leo tried to integrate all that was done wrong by the Atlanteans, Aquarius is going to have to integrate everything that was done wrong by the Pisceans from Pisces.
En la era de Acuario se va a intentar acomodar todo lo que hicieron mal los piscianos. ¿Sí? Vale.
So in Aquarius, we're not going to fly up to fifth dimension. From third dimension, we can still easily vibrate in fifth dimension. Probably we won't see angels. We are not going to experience an age where we are connected spiritually. Aquarius is an age where we are going to work socially in constant communication with new technology and the unification again of the plan on Earth. This means to become conscious again of that plan on Earth. Okay, and inside Aquarius, we're going to have a period of 150 to 200 years where we have to integrate the age of Aries. So what's happening with the Earth today? Today on Earth, we're going to go through this vibration. So, as you can see, this vibration is constantly on Earth. What happened in Virgo? Atlantida, yes? And now we are entering Aquarius. So what does this vibration mean? Can you recognize the color? It's the indigo vibration. It has always been present in the history of humanity. It's not new. It's not as if there are indigo souls. It's the planet which vibrates in indigo. Indigo is the color of transmutation and change. So during history, there are higher or lower intensity of indigo vibration. Can you see the highest peaks? At the end of Atlantis and at the current date. Indigo means transmutation of everything which is stuck. Atlantis got very stuck. And in Pisces, we are also in the same situation. So now we need a group which deconstructs everything. That's the idea. So during Virgo, what was mainly experienced was wisdom, working the process through knowledge. So during 7,000 years, Virgo, Leo, Cancer, and parts of Gemini, they worked with wisdom on Earth, through the wise ones, the kingdoms, the priests. That's why in those ages, the example to follow was the wise elders, you know, with the long beard and so on. So from the age of Taurus onwards, anyone knows what happened during this age? Egypt. So in 4000 BC, we have Egypt, Persia, Mesopotamia, Babylon. In Taurus, the age of will begins. So during Taurus, Aries, and Pisces, the humans are going to practice the will of the being. So from here, humanity is going to work through wars, professions, work, effort, studies. So who is going to be the example to follow in all this? Well, it's going to be the adults. Everyone follows the guidance of the adults, the importance of work and effort. So after, during Aquarius, what ages begins? Do you remember the sacred trinity? Wisdom, will, and love? But not the cheesy type, okay? It's unconditional love. So during Aquarius, Capricorn, and Sagittarius, we're going to work for 7,500 years of love on Earth. So what does this mean? It's not that we are going to be loving. Really, well, during the ages of wisdom, we worked on will and love through wisdom. So during the ages of will, we worked on wisdom and love through will. So during the ages of love, we are going to work on wisdom and will through love. This is what's going to happen, and this is why some adults are suffering so much with the young ones today. Because during the Aquarius, the pattern that we're going to follow is the teenager. That's why sometimes we are sent to share this information and being younger than 25 years old, for people to get used to it, yeah? This is why society is so focused on the teenagers today. The adults and the old ones wanting to be like teenagers. Everything is made the teenager style. It has its logic, okay? No, it's not that the elders will disappear. The vibration is young. So before they were also children, even if the vibration was older. It's just the example to follow, the teenagers. Because we are going to live in a vibration which is based on love and fluidity. Who flows the best? Well, the young ones. We can't continue with the structured work of the adults. That's why the transition between will and love is creating so much suffering. The adults now call the young generation the no generation. Yeah? No work, no studying, nothing. They were born to lay down and wait, and in the meantime play video games. Why is this? Because somehow we have to break with the structured system, and many times it's going to be non-action and peaceful the way it's done. Which is the peaceful way, not to interfere in the process. I sit down and wait. Yeah? He doesn't do his homework. Why should I? He doesn't do anything at home. Why should I? I don't care. You won't be able to make a living. How do you know? Maybe yes. Who knows what happens tomorrow? So we're going to do things through flowing, and we're not going to work just for the sake of working. We're going to work because we feel we must work. This is will through love. And one is not going to learn to have a great CV, but to learn what one has to learn and for this to be applied. That's why I say working through fluidity or love. So we've got then the elder, which was wisdom, the adult, which is will, the young one, which is love, and the child. To reach a child, we still have to wait for a long time. Now we are entering the young one, which means at least 200 years of social teenager. This is going to hurt. This means constant transformation. So it's good to know for those adults who are having a hard time as teachers or parents. Because this is what's new. Teenagers. Not necessarily a group of beautiful spiritual beings connected with God. We have to understand that all of them are part of the process. That's why I put these images. Every young person who is helping to transform society is doing an indigo process. It's not a specific group with a kind of indigo ID. What I'm trying to show here is that we shouldn't classify the young people. For example, a very common categorization. Can you see those two images at the top left and right? Who are they? Yes, well, they call them dark, emos, goth. Who would you think they are, and at what level are they coming from? From the dark? From the demons? Well, normally they are coming from the Christic level, because they are here to channel the pain and suffering of society through their body and soul. They are purifying the planet through their being and life. So darkness is not always a negative thing, okay? So we must understand that all of them are doing their process and work here, okay? Alright, so these generational changes affect society to transform it. And this is going to be done basically in two ways: action and non-action, passive. We are used to the action because we have been working with will during 7,000 years. So we have the tendency to implement action, yeah? Political parties, revolution, unions, transform politics through politics. One has to study to make a living. You have to work all your life to afford a beautiful coffin, for example. Yes, we have reached that point in our society, haven't we? That inherited mortgage and all that. Does this make sense? Well, not anymore, because everything which is will with no love, is falling. Everything which is changed through change, through action, begins to fail, because it's no longer the action but the non-action. And what is non-action? It doesn't mean to be inactive. It means not to participate in the process. I look what is happening and I don't participate until I feel I must. This is to make all that excessive action to slow down and crash into a wall. The ones who are working through non-action, they are basically just waiting to begin to do what they have came here to do. In the meanwhile, they work as a filter, the filter of action. So if before we needed a revolution to transform society, now it's going to be through an anti-revolution. Many are waiting for world peace, but when we have to transform war, it's pretty illogical to declare a war for peace. We are very stuck with this point, to fight for peace. Like I said, it's very illogical. What should be done is to not participate in the war. How do we finish with war? By stop feeding the system. I just sit down and I wait. Okay? This hurts a lot, both for the one sitting down and waiting and for the one observing the person sitting down and waiting. Because there are souls who have agreed to be stuck during 30 years. Not because they want to, but because society forces them to, because it frustrates or has frustrated its action. They know they mustn't feed the society and participate in it. But when they come here and they're born, society tells them constantly what it has to do this, that, and the other. But he or she feels they mustn't do it. So they get stuck and they become socially deserted. And they begin to be oppressed with family, education, culture, religion, and so on. And one ends up spending 30 years of their life not knowing what to do, when they should have done it before. So also many adults of these days are going to have to go through it. Some adults are so adapted to the age of will and work and action, the ones that are obsessively thinking that they have to work to survive. And then the universal systems brings down something to the physical plane, which is very painful, called unemployment. Have you heard of it? All the systems that appear on Earth are previously made by the mathematical universal geometrical systems. What does unemployment do? It stops you by force. If you don't stop and contemplate what's happening around you, it'll force you to stop so that you can calmly observe it. But there's people that even in this situation, they just can't see it. They can't see it. And here's where the problem comes, because one must continue and walk. The least one is worried, the better they can do what they have came here to do. That's why non-action is an example how to work with a new vibration, at least during a short period of time. So adults don't understand this very well and think, how can I tell my son to get a move on and to work? The best thing is to not say anything, just let them do it when they have to do it. Adults should just support them in their process, and for each of them to do their process. Adults don't have to worry about the young ones, but to worry about themselves. The rest will work on at itself. So things are going to begin to change by parts. We got family, education, economy, society, and politics. And through these, the systems will fall and regenerate. Why does the family have to change? Because it's a Pisces type of organizations. Male, female, mother, father, son, daughter, grandmother, father. It's just a practice which was absolutely necessary to experience during the last 2,000 years. In Aries, for example, 4,000 years ago, the family structure was very relative. They had groups where there were many women married with many men and the other way around. After in Pisces, things had to be dual. And now in Aquarius, things are going to have to flow. I go here, I see this, I go to another place. Yeah, I can have many couples in the same week to try, to experience. And if I don't like any of them, I just go on my own. The family is just a joint process to evolve. The family can be 2 or 100 people. Education also begins to break down because it doesn't work anymore. Because it only works on a small part of the left brain, the tension and memory. This produces poor synapses. Everyone knows what a synapses is? It's the relationship between two neurons which connect and produce a kind of learning. Yeah, if I'm experiencing something new, a synapse begins to occur in a different location of the brain to learn it. Well, just to make it simple. So, at this level of education, we have poor synapses, which makes you yawn, and suddenly someone in the class says something stupid, and you begin to have synapses, and then the teacher says, quiet, and you go back to the poor synapses. By the way, laughing and saying stupid things is a good method to join the two hemispheres of the brain, all right?
Cállense, sinapsis. ¿Sí? ¿Se entiende? ¿Por qué? Porque reírse y decir estupideces también es una parte de alinear los dos hemisferios cerebrales. ¿Ah?
And this is important for the new education, to work with theory and practice with both hemispheres of the brain. We don't have to eliminate theory just because we are frustrated with it because we've been using it so long and for so many time. Theory is also important, but it must be constantly adapted to practice, experimentation, imagination, and creation. I can teach 5 subjects, mathematics, language, chemistry, geometry, and physics, in just 1 hour of cooking. This is to adapt the theory to practice. This is the idea that the school should follow in the future. Not to eliminate theory and do, absurd things, because sometimes we tend to do the same systems but in disguise, yes, the reverse. For example, before people used to do homework, and now they've decided to make the children paint mandalas. Before they used to punish the children, now they make them meditate. Before they would do PE, and now they will sing around a tree, for example. We shouldn't disguise the form, but change the content and the structure of it. We live in a physical world, so we have to learn how to live and survive in a physical world. We can't live based on fairy tale ideas flying about. All the ideas should have a practical use. So use the understanding of God, spirituality, angels, masters to work here. How can we use this and to express it here, okay? So, when it comes to economy, well, we know that the economy is already collapsing and will collapse even more when a solar storm affects the satellite systems. But, well, that's another story and we'll see it later. The economy doesn't fall because it's bad or it's negative. It begins to collapse when it gets worn out, when it is overused and abused. This is what's happening now. There are so many numbers, banks, and that it's beginning to fail. It ends when it begins to empty itself. That's why many young ones are emptying the adults' pockets, okay? This doesn't mean that it's the positive or only way of doing it. It's happening by force because it's got stuck. So, society will end up falling, okay, also because during Pisces the tendency was for society to unite in groups, associations, with a name, a flag, with a common aim, for everyone to collaborate for the same thing. But in Aquarius, the society is flexible. This means I can create a group which can last just one day. But during that day, I collaborated with something. I helped to make something. You know, it's like I met with a lot of people, I did what I had to do, and it's time for me to continue my process. And again, meet with another group to collaborate and continue with my process, all right? It's a continuous process. It's a kind of wave that we practice between individuals and groups, yeah? So we go from groups to being again alone, we go back to another group and we become alone again. So the group isn't going to be the most important, but it's going to be each individual journey. So society is going to change by breaking down everything which is social organizations to create social networks. So before we would meet in a house to discuss how to solve the world problems, and now we are going to go to Facebook, for example, and in Facebook I connect or I'm in if I feel like it. If I don't want to, I don't exist. I decide where I go and what I share and when I want to share it. It's flexible, okay? So there's going to be a total flexibility. And politics will fall by its own because politics is just a propaganda. Politics is the pineal gland of our physical body, the part that controls and organizes the rest. But if it's based on something absurd, then the rest won't work. Politics, or the pineal gland, is a propaganda which all the rest of the chakras listen to. Politics is a propaganda, so this whole thing of saying that, for example, Coca-Cola is bad and don't drink it because it's bad, most surely what's going to happen is that you're going to think about that Coca-Cola and end up having one. If I say, for example, that politics is bad and negative and that there are political conspiracies, then one is going to think constantly in the conspiracies and end up giving it energy. How can we end with a propaganda? Well, when one begins to ignore the propaganda. This way, the propaganda loses strength and it ends up falling by its own. Some say, if we don't vote, the bad ones will win at the end. Well, let them win. So what? When they win, they're going to face such a disaster that they're not going to know what to do. So worse for them, just let them be then. So, what I'm most interested to share about all of this is the following. What is the base or the pillar of a society? Which is the most important aspect to change, which will affect and change the rest? Education? Family? What do you think? Family? The economy, yes. Economy is the pillar of any society. We don't like it because it's been perverted. In our physical body, which chakra is the economy? You're going to want to die. Yes, it's the heart. Okay? The heart is the bank, and the blood is the money or material goods. What's wrong with the current use of the economy today? Where does all the money go to? To the heart, to the bank. And if all the blood, money, goes to the heart, what happens? you have a heart attack. That's what's happening with the economy today, okay? So all the blood is going towards the heart. That's why the economy is exploding everywhere, because the system can't bear it no longer. The heart has to give blood to all the parts of the body, and wherever it's lacking blood, it must go there. It has to be balanced. And why? Have you ever heard the saying, full belly, happy heart? Well, the physical society doesn't sustain itself from the mind or the heart. It can only sustain itself by feeding itself. Alimentation is crucial. So really, to start the change from the family is a bit difficult, because the family has to survive economically. Without a balanced economy, the family can't sustain itself. How can I teach my son or daughter to create a new society if we are sustaining ourselves in a banking society? It's a bit difficult. Education, either, because the teacher has to pay his or her rent, tax, and other things. So he ends up or she ends up tired at the end of the day, and when she arrives at school, she just tells the students to read page 28 and shut up. Society is formed by the movement of its members, who move the economy. If the heart doesn't change, neither the movement of its members. Politics is the pineal gland. If the heart stops, the mind dies. So the heart economy is the change of all societies. The best way to begin a subtle change is to combine the changes of the economy and the education, so that education can help to create a new sustained society, not a political society, but a sustainable society. So it's going to be very important to heal the beliefs we've got about economy. One has to relax, breathe deeply, and let free. When will these changes take place? That's where we are now, between Pisces and Aquarius, 2012. This is how the change is going to take place. Can you see the line that splits both ages? Can you see that the blue goes into Pisces and the red inside Aquarius before and after 2012? That process is what we call transition and lasts about 200 years. The Aquarius vibration began about 100 years ago on Earth, especially in the 40s and 50s. It began to vibrate more and more intensely, and now we are vibrating a fair bit of it. In 2012, we go to the Aquarian age, more or less. But look how the Pisces vibration continues into Aquarius. During this period, we are going to have to integrate the history of Pisces. In the next 100 years, we're going to have to integrate Pisces, like I say. We are still going to be having systems and social conflicts. Things aren't going to change from one day to another. And in one day, maybe things begin to collapse so that we can begin to integrate it. But it doesn't end, it just collapses, which is quite different. On the 21st of December 2012, the two suns align. After this, we enter into a process during 2013 and 2014 of constant transformation of things. Remember that the future is just a projection of the past, which means it's predictable but not exact, because it's constantly vibrating very high. So what we think or say is going to happen is not necessarily going to happen. What's going to happen depends on how we are vibrating at the moment. I can tell you, what should happen in 2013 according to the plan, but because it depends on what will be done and happen here, it's never going to be exact. So, during the alignment of the two suns with our planet, a great burst of light from the central sun is going to affect us. For you to understand, our planet represents the finger articulation. The sun is the wrist articulation. The elbow represents Sirius. The shoulder represents Alcyon. another important star located in the Pleiades. And the heart is the central sun of the galaxy.
Otra estrella importante que está en Pleiades. Y esto de aquí, el sol central de la galaxia.
We all move this way, okay? And during 2012, we are going to do this. All the suns align towards Earth. This means that the pulse of the central sun points directly towards us. Another sun isn't going to appear on the horizon like some have said. If this happens, I'd advise you to begin to run away now. This pulse of the central sun will reactivate the other suns, especially our sun, creating sunstorms which will burst out huge electromagnetic waves towards the planet. The first planet to be affected will be Mercury, then Venus, and after Earth. Earth has an electromagnetic shield to protect us from the excess of electromagnetism. The problem here is that this doesn't cover our satellites. What does this mean? They may be, maybe all the communication on our planet will collapse. When this happens, everything, which is communication or finances, will be deleted. And this maybe will be the crisis that everyone is talking about. Because when the computers begin to fail, then you'll end up with the €4 you had in your pocket. The comments of the lady. Will my mortgage also be deleted?
Si tengo una hipoteca, si se borra.
Who knows? If they printed it before, well, maybe you'll still be screwed. Well, everything that appears as 0 and 1s on the computer system will begin to go crazy. So the main problem will be for those who are attached to the financial system, those with credit cards and all that type of things. It's not that money will disappear forever. What will end is the financial accumulation of money. That's the only difference. During this process, maybe many people will go vibrationally unstable because when the vibration of the planet begins to increase, then our brain vibration will also increase. And here is what the whole consciousness change of 2012 talks about. This doesn't really mean that we are going to connect with the spirit again, but probably it'll create in some people a certain unbalance where before they were very structured. So for some people who are vibrating in a structured manner will suddenly activate their right brain suddenly and begin to see things and go half schizophrenic for a while. And maybe those who are connected will suddenly close down. So this doesn't mean we are entering an age where we are going to all be connected again, but we are going to transform ourselves. That's the important part. And there's going to be a new consciousness because there's going to be something different. This will last for some years, and the social process will last for about 50 to 60 years. So relax again. It's a social process, not a process in our life. So your life may change in 2 days, but to change a society it takes years. So don't expect things to drastically change suddenly. The satellite system may break down suddenly, but the rest will take its time. So, the main basis and pillars to understand how to live through this process now, I'm going to explain that. Well, we have to remember that to be able to channel light, we have to know that we are here for that purpose. In Aquarius, we're going to channel the light through a different process. Well, first of all, what's important to know is it's going to be a process of individuality. During 2,000 years, we are going to practice, experience an individual process, not so much to depend on others. Each person should know what they have to do and when they have to do it. That's why associations and relationships are starting to fail, and people are feeling a bit lonely more than ever. Even the spiritual guides who were constantly around us are letting go to see if we can start walking all right. So if you feel lonely, Try to enjoy it. Don't be afraid of being alone, because individuality is going to be a process to work on. Number 2 is self-direction. From now on, the spiritual masters are going to become learning partners. They were helping to guide us before when we were completely lost, but now our process is going to be individual and not in group. So we don't need masters. Each person knows what they have to do and where they have to go. If someone tells you to begin to stock on food and run to the mountains to save yourself, don't necessarily take a notice, because maybe your path must be done in the middle of the city. Each person knows what they have to do. They have agreed it before. So it's important to flow and do what one feels they have to do. Number 3, spiritual authority. We don't necessarily have to become spiritual and neither be authoritarian. We have to join light with darkness. When we begin to join and understand both, then we begin to be our own spiritual authority. This means we become an integrated being who knows what they have to say when they have to say it. And it doesn't matter if it bothers someone. If it does bother someone, there must be a reason for it. Something must have affected them inside. Number 4 is anchorage. To be here and now, present. Not to fly around the atmosphere. To be here, because our process was to get born here, to bring Earth back to heaven. Okay? And number 5, ego. Anyone knows what the ego is? It's our personality. There is a misunderstanding about the ego. Many understand it as something negative. This idea of deleting the ego to become pure again. Ego means I in Latin. I can't delete my I. What I can do is balance it. So it doesn't become egocentric or selfish. I have to balance it. This is an important difference. We have to be full and balanced during the time we are doing what we have to do here. And for this to be possible, we need our ego. Ego supremum is big I am. So even if someone is trying to influence your process, you have to determine your boundaries. For everyone to know that it's your process and you can't decide for others, nor others can decide for you. And for this it's important, the ego. Number 6, love. Unconditional love, which means to accept the process of the others. The day we begin to accept the process of even the worst politicians, the occults, the Illuminatis, and all this, to accept that their role is important for certain things, just that they are doing it in a negative way because they don't really know how to do it well. The day we integrate all this, we will begin to live unconditional love. Unconditional love isn't selective. It's not just for the few good ones. It's for everyone. We are all in the process. So take this into consideration when the time comes to practice it. Number 7, stability. It is very important, and it can only be achieved through detachment. Not detachment of leaving everything, but to not be affected if one has things or not. If I have a lot of things, don't be affected. If you have a lot of things, don't be affected by it. What's important is to live in harmony and balance, so that we don't get emotionally affected from what's happening outside. This way we can obtain stability. But we can't achieve any of these things without happiness. For about approximately 10,000 years, humans have made an important mistake, which was to search for happiness. People did things to find happiness. What is humanity's aim? To be happy. That's probably why they never find it. Happiness shouldn't be an aim, but a state of being during the journey. Happiness is the pillar to achieve the rest, not the rest to find happiness. So you should try to be happy. How? However you want to, laughing, saying stupid things, enjoying matter and spirituality in matter. Us as Westerners, we don't have a doctrine, we have fluidity. So enjoy the fluidity and laughing in that fluidity. Laughing rises the vibration of our body up to 7th dimension. So it's important to laugh and say stupid things. So when you read 7th dimension and you say, "Oh, my master," you'll probably hear him say, "Look what a stupid face you got on you." Don't worry if this happens. Probably you just needed a bit more laughter.
No se asusten, no es que lo han hecho mal, ¿sí? Sino que falta un poco más de risa.
My advice to live during these times. First of all, breathing. To breathe appropriately, deeply and constantly, and with the abdomen, not with the lungs. With the lungs, we mobilize our emotions and work towards outwards. With our stomach, we integrate everything that was old to be useful for what's new. So a lot of abdominal breathing, because it also activates the energetic pattern that surrounds us. Number 2, how we feed ourselves. To eat what the body needs, not what you believe your body needs. If the body just needs water, give it water. If it needs meat, then meat. It's important to respect the needs of our body. Okay? Number 3 is anchorage, to be here and now. The 3 things in this order reflects the following. To be trees. Everything you do with your breathing, feeding, and anchorage can be understood by being trees. They are the best masters we can have during the next 2,000 years. Why? First of all, because they don't speak. They only respond by being. They breathe in light. They channel and transform it through their feeding system. They take it down to earth by being present on earth, and they give it back to all the other beings which are outwards. That sums up everything from the origin of the universe. So we are universes practicing inside another universe, helping this big universe to understand itself by understanding ourselves. We have to do it by living happily everything that is in this universe, allowing ourselves to flow in that universe, experimenting everything we can in this universe. And the best way to do it is as simple as breathing, eating, and being present like trees. So, from now on, each of us has the answer within to know how to live our future. It doesn't matter what's going to happen in the future. What's important is for it to happen and for you to enjoy it. So when you finish listening to this, do something stupid, go to the cinema, eat something solid, go for a walk. Whatever you want to do. And please, try forget about everything you heard here for a couple of days. Because the idea is for the information to resonate in your cells and not in your left brain, like up to now.
Ya que la idea es que resuene en sus células, no en su hemisferio izquierdo como hasta ahora. ¿Vale? Bueno.
Well, seeing that it's so late and they're gonna close us in here, just this. My advice, be trees, enjoy yourself, laugh, forget about this for a couple of days, and thanks a lot to be present here in this process now. Thanks. Time to decide. Are you ready to be part of it?